In June of 1866, a man named Charles Goodnight pointed about 2,000 head of cattle west out of Texas and rode them straight at 80 miles of open ground with no water on it. Not a creek, not a seep. 80 miles of hardpan and mesquite between the Middle Concho and a muddy crossing on the Pecos River, and the only way to the other side was through. It took 3 days and 3 nights. The men did not sleep. The cattle went blind-eyed and staggering, bawling for water they could not smell yet, and the dust came up off them so thick a man could not see the rider next to him. Cattle died standing up and got walked over. And when that herd finally caught the scent of the Pecos, still miles out, they broke. 2,000 head of half-dead cattle stampeded for that river and piled into it, and more of them drowned and got trampled in the water than ever died of thirst on the dry. Now here is the first thing I want you to notice. The heat gets the blame for that crossing. It always has. But the heat did not kill those cattle. What happened at the water killed them. The heat was just the ground it happened on. And here is the part nobody tells you. The men lived. Every one of the hands on that drive came out the other side of 80 waterless miles in June, in country that runs 110 in the shade when there is any shade, and they did it wearing wool, long sleeves, long pants, hats on, buttoned up to the throat in the hottest part of the day. That was not toughness, friend. Toughness runs out around hour 9. That was a system. 7 or 8 habits stacked one on top of another worked from before daylight until after dark, and every one of them still works today because the human body has not changed one particle since 1866. So let me ask you plain. Could you do a full day of hard work outside at 110 degrees with no truck cab to climb into, no cooler, no ice, no shade you did not make yourself, and come in standing up at dark? Most men cannot. Most men now cannot make it 2 hours. Your granddaddy's outfit did it 4 months a year, every year, and thought so little of it they never wrote it down. My name's Wade Coulter. I am 64 years old, 4th generation on this ground in the rolling plains of West Texas. My people came up the trail in 1878, and they never left. I learned most of what I am about to tell you from a wagon boss named Emmett, who was old when I was young. Now I am going to give you the whole day, first light to dark, the way it was actually run. And there are 2 things in here I want you watching for. The one about the clothes is going to sound backwards to you. It is going to sound like the opposite of everything you have been told, and it is the single most important thing in this video. And near the end, I am going to give you the tell. The one thing an old wagon boss watched for in a man's face that told him whether that man was going to be alive at supper. He never explained it to anybody. He just watched. I will explain it, but not yet. And none of this got forgotten because it stopped working. It got forgotten because somewhere along the way we decided that being comfortable and being capable were the same thing. They are not. A man in an air-conditioned cab has not beaten the heat. He has only postponed it. And there is a whole industry that would like to sell you that postponement at $400 a throw. That is not on you. They are good at selling. But your great-grandfather solved the same problem with a hat and a bandana, and it cost him nothing. All right. The day starts in the dark. 3 o'clock in the morning, maybe half past. The cook has coffee going, and the horse wrangler is bringing in the remuda. Nobody is hurrying, and nobody is talking much. And here is what matters about that hour. They are not up early because they are industrious. They are up early because the first 4 hours after daylight are the only free hours in the whole day. That is the coolest air you are going to get, and it is the only time a man and a horse can work hard without paying for it. So the hardest work went in the cool. gathering, moving, roping, anything that put a horse in a lather, all of it front-loaded before the sun got high. On a trail drive, they made most of their 10 or 12 miles in the morning and let the herd graze slow through the worst of the afternoon. They were not covering less ground than we would, they were covering it at the right hour. Now think about how you work. Most men now start at 8 because that is when work starts, and by 11 they are into the teeth of it with the whole afternoon still ahead. That is not a failure of toughness. That is a schedule somebody else wrote for you, and it is the wrong one for hot country. So that is the first habit, and it costs nothing. Move the hard work to the front of the day. If you have got fence to stretch or a garden to break or a roof to walk this summer, start it at first light and quit at 11. You will do more work and pay less for it. Now, before that man ever steps out of the bedroll, he gets dressed. And this is the part that is going to sound wrong. He puts on a wool shirt, long sleeves, buttoned at the cuff, long pants, usually wool or heavy canvas. And in the hottest month of the year, he keeps that shirt buttoned up and those sleeves rolled down. Every instinct you have says take it off. Get the sun on your skin. Get some air on you. That instinct will hurt you, and here's why. When you are working in real heat, sweat is not what cools you. Sweat is just water on skin. Evaporation is what cools you. Sweat has to turn to vapor and lift off your body, and when it does, it carries heat away with it. That is the whole mechanism. That is the only cooling system you have got. Now, sweat that runs, sweat that drips off your chin and off your elbows and soaks into your belt, that sweat did nothing for you. It never evaporated. It cost you water and salt and gave you no cooling back at all. Dripping sweat is wasted sweat, and a bare-skinned man in direct sun in dry country drips most of what he makes. A loose wool shirt changes that. It holds a thin layer of still air against your skin, and your sweat evaporates into that layer instead of running off you. The cloth stays damp and works like a swamp cooler an inch off your body. Wool does this better than cotton because wool keeps its loft when it is wet. Cotton wets out, goes flat, plasters to you, and quits. That is why every old hand out here wore wool in July and thought nothing of it. And there is a second thing that shirt is doing. It is keeping the sun off you. Direct sun on bare skin is not just uncomfortable, it is heat load, pouring into you all day long faster than you can shed it. Cover the skin and you cut that load way down. Researchers who studied desert peoples found the same thing about loose robes, and they were surprised by it, and the people wearing the robes were not surprised at all. So the rule is cover up, keep it loose, and let it breathe. Not tight, loose. The air gap is the whole trick. A tight synthetic shirt in the sun is worse than nothing. Then the hat goes on, and a good hat is not a fashion item. It is a piece of architecture. The brim is wide because it is not shading your face, it is shading your neck and the tops of your shoulders. That is where you cook. The crown is tall because that dome of dead air above your head is insulation, and it is why a proper hat is cooler than a ball cap, even though it covers more of you. There is a sweatband inside doing real work, and there is often a vent or two punched in the sides, letting the hot air walk out the top. A ball cap shades 6 inches of your face and leaves your neck and ears bare to the sun all day. It is not the same tool. It is not close. And here's the little one. When it got bad, a man would take his hat to the water trough and wet the crown, not the brim, and put it back on soaking. That water evaporating off the top of your head, with your whole scalp underneath it, will drop you down more than you would believe. Costs nothing. Takes 4 seconds. Next comes the wild rag, the bandana. And if I could get modern men to bring back one single item, it would be this one, because it is the most useful square foot of cloth ever carried by a working man. Wet it and tie it loose around your neck, and it is a cooling device, because the blood going to your head runs close to the surface right there, and you are cooling it on the way through. Pull it over your mouth and nose, and it is a dust filter. And on that Pecos crossing, the dust was thick enough that men rode with them up for hours. Drop it down the back of your neck, and it is a sun cape. Soak it and lay it across your wrists at noon, and you are cooling blood again. It is a bandage. It is a sling. It is a strainer for bad water. It is a pot holder on a Dutch oven. $2, weighs nothing. Most men have not carried one in 50 years. So that is your man dressed, covered, loose, hat on, rag at his neck, moving hard in the cool of the morning. Now the sun climbs, and the next thing he has to get right is water. And this is where more men go down than any other place in the day. Because you would think the rule is drink all you can hold. It is not. There are 3 parts to it, and the third one is the one almost nobody knows anymore. The first part is steady, not sudden. An old hand sipped, all day, small pulls, constant. He did not ride 4 hours dry and then drink a gallon at the tank. Your body can only take up so much water at a time, and the rest of it goes straight through you and takes minerals with it on the way out. Little and often beats a lot and seldom every single time. The second part is how you carry it. Water sealed in metal in the sun becomes hot water, and hot water is hard to drink and does you less good. So they did not seal it. A desert water bag was heavy canvas, and it was supposed to seep. That was the whole point. A little water worked through the weave to the outside, evaporated off the surface, and pulled the heat out of what was left inside. Hang that bag where the wind gets at it, and the water in it will be cooler than the air around it. Same idea as the unglazed clay olla the folks down south have used for hundreds of years. Porous on purpose. It cools itself by giving a little away. Now the third part, the one that gets missed. When you sweat, you are not just losing water, you are losing salt. And if you drink water hard all day and put nothing back, you can thin your blood out to where you get weak and sick and cramped and confused, and every bit of that can look like heat exhaustion while you are drinking plenty. Men have gone down that way while doing what they thought was right. The old outfits handle this without ever knowing the chemistry. The chuck wagon fed salt pork, salt bacon, beans cooked with salt meat, biscuits with salt in them. The food carried the salt, and the salt held the water in a man. It was not a plan. It was just what they ate. But it worked, and if you take one thing out of this section, take that one. Water and salt travel together. Water alone in hard heat is only half the answer. So there's your morning. Now the sun gets to the top of the sky. And here is where a wise outfit did something that looks like laziness and is not. They quit. Middle of the day, the herd got let out to graze and lay up, and the men got off their horses and into whatever shade there was. That is the noon layup, and it was not a rest break, it was a survival tactic. Between about 11 and 4, there is no winning. Every hour of hard work in that window costs you 2 hours of recovery, and you will pay it before dark whether you feel it at the time or not. And if there is no shade, and out on that country there is not, you make it. The wagon sheet stretched off the side of the chuck wagon and staked out shaded the whole crew. A slicker thrown over brush. And if you are on foot with nothing at all, you get in the shadow of your horse. It is not much, but a horse standing broadside will cover a man lying down. And the ground itself, sun-baked dirt is an oven, but scrape down 4 or 5 inches in the shade, and the earth underneath is a good deal cooler. Old hands and old dogs both know it. Lie on that cool dirt, get still, and let the day pass over you. Now, before I give you the last piece, I want to say one honest thing. I am no doctor, and I will not pretend to be. Everything I have given you so far is how you keep from getting in trouble. What I am about to tell you is how you know somebody already is, and that part is not a home remedy. That is an emergency, and it wants a hospital. I will say it again in a minute. Here is the tell. It is not sweating. It is not the color of a man's face. Old Emmett watched for one thing above everything else, and it was this. He watched for a man to go quiet. A crew in the heat gripes, constantly, about the dust, about the horses, about the cook. That griping is a sign of a healthy man. What Emmett watched for was the hand who stopped, quit talking, quit complaining, got a little clumsy with his hands, fumbled a latigo he had tied 10,000 times, answered a question a half-second late, or answered the wrong question, said something that did not quite make sense and did not notice he had said it. That man was not toughing it out. That man's brain was cooking, and Emmett would have him off that horse and in the shade with his shirt open and water on him before he ever finished the sentence. And he was right, and modern medicine says exactly the same thing today. When the heat gets into a man's head, when he goes confused or clumsy or strange or quiet, that is the emergency. Not the sweating, not the redness, the head. And I want to correct one old belief while I am here, because the old-timers had this part wrong. They watched for a man to stop sweating and took that as the alarm. Do not wait for that. A man can be in serious trouble and still be soaked to the skin. Waiting for the sweating to stop is waiting too long. So I will say it plain, and this is the second time. If a man in the heat goes confused or stumbles or talks strange or drops, that is not a rest and he will be fine situation. Get him out of the sun. Get him cool any way you can. Water on him and get help coming right then. It kills people every summer, and it kills them fast. The same goes for your horse, and it went double out here. Hard breathing that will not settle after 5 minutes standing. Stumbling. A horse that quits wanting to move. Emmett would tell you a man can walk home, and a horse cannot carry you if he is down. So you watch the horse as close as you watch the man. Now, dark comes, and there is one more habit. The day is not over when the work is. The men not standing night watch slept out in the open air, on the ground, with the breeze on them. Nobody slept in a closed room. Nobody slept hot. The night is when your body dumps the heat it took on all day, and if you spend the night hot, you start tomorrow already behind. And they drank steady in the evening, with supper, with salt in the food. Tomorrow's day was won or lost at tonight's fire. That is the whole system, friend. Start before the sun. Cover your skin and keep it loose. A real hat, wet on top when it gets bad. A wet rag at the neck. Sip constant, salt with it. Keep the water cool by letting it breathe. Quit at noon and make shade if there is none. Watch the man who goes quiet. Cool off at night and start tomorrow even. 8 habits. Not one of them costs $20. Not one of them needs power. And all 8 together will let a man work in heat that puts a modern crew in the truck by 10 in the morning. Now, do not go trying to run all of that at once. Pick one. This week, wear a wet bandana at your neck for 1 hour outside and pay attention to what it does. That is Saturday. That is the whole entry ticket, and I would bet money on what you come back and tell me. Those men on the Pecos in 1866, the ones who walked 2,000 head across 80 waterless miles in June, they were not built different than you. They were not braver, and they were not stronger. They just had 8 habits handed down to them that nobody ever bothered to hand to you. Now come down in the comments and tell me something. Tell me what your daddy or your granddaddy wore to work in the summer and whether he ever took his shirt off to do it. I read every one of them, and the stories that come back are usually better than anything I have got. And whichever one gets talked about the most is the one I go deep on next. Speaking of next time, there is a rule the old outfits had about drinking water that sounds like cruelty and was actually kindness, about what a wagon boss did when a man came off a dry stretch and dove head first into the first tank he saw. That one has killed people, and I will show you why. Until then, ride for the brand.